Hi friends, how are you? This week has been a bit of a write-off. I've been quite sick and our schedule has kind of been all over the place. So I have really struggled to get on here this week, but that's life, am I right? The struggle is real. It's real life. And on top of that, I don't know if anyone has been feeling this themselves, but it's been a bit of a melancholy week, like in the world. Firstly, I'm not sure if anyone heard that much, but Canada had their worst mass shooting ever this week. 22 people were gunned down in their homes over a period of time, and then their homes were set on fire with them in it. And this is the worst mass shooting that Canada has ever had, and in the history of the world that might not seem like much, but I remember when Australia had the Port Arthur massacre, and there was just this sense around the country of these things just don't happen here. And I'm not Canadian, I'm not living in Canada. My heart goes out to everyone who is living in Canada and is Canadian, but I just get this sense that that's the case there. And that's pretty shocking. But I think one of the most shocking things that I found around the situation was that no one was really talking about it. Like, I didn't really see anything on social media or in mainstream media. Not that I watch the news much these days, but I get the I get the news updates and the top stories and so forth on my device and on Facebook, and I felt like I really had to go looking for it. Like ABC had stuff on it, and the Queen was all over it. She had sent out her condolences to Nova Scotia where it had occurred, but it didn't seem to register as a blip on the world's radar. And to me, that felt just a bit sad. It's like as if going through this international crisis of COVID-19 wasn't enough. And then this country has had to deal with this huge grief. It felt like grief upon grief. And that's huge. That's really huge. And then it made me think about perhaps there are others out there, or I'm sure there are others out there, should I say, that might be experiencing real grief right now. And I'm talking about grief upon grief, not just inconvenience or not just a feeling of unease, but deep pits of grief that feel like there's no way out, like the walls are so high and you're such in the deepest depth of grief that you have no idea how you're going to get through it. And maybe no one has seemed to notice. I'm thinking, of course, there's also in our own country in Melbourne, something else quite tragic occurred this week, and 4 police officers were run down by a semi-trailer on the Eastern Freeway. And this was the largest single loss of life in one incident in the history of Victoria Police. Like, police don't just die like that. You're in Australia. And that was a real sense of grief. And I did see that go around, people experiencing this grief, this loss of life, like that is just something bizarre that doesn't happen here ordinarily. And we're going through this weird crisis, this weird time that not for not everyone it's not grief, but for some it could be. And it's grief on top of grief. And I don't know if you're experiencing anything like this right now, or maybe you know someone who is, and I don't have any answers, quite honestly. All I know is that God experienced grief. Jesus experienced deep, deep grief when he was on the earth. We know that he was so overcome with grief that he wept. Jesus wept. I also know that grief is a part of life that we need to feel and we need to acknowledge and we need to sit in for a time. And I also know that eventually when the time is right, God can help us out of the pit of grief, even if we can't find a way out ourselves, or even if we can't see how we're ever going to get out of it. He makes a way where there is no way. And just like the Israelites that I spoke about last week, I think it was, he parted the Red Sea for them to walk on dry land. And he wants to do that for us in our own lives. So for today, anyone sitting in grief, deep pits of grief that you feel like you can't get out of, I want to acknowledge your pain, and I want to acknowledge that there is hope. If you're feeling like there is no hope, I encourage you to reach out. And I don't know, that might be reach out to a trusted friend, reach out to Lifeline or any other of those sorts of services or supports, or you can reach out to me, you can send me a message. Reach out to someone that you trust, or a stranger, a professional stranger. But God will make a way where there is no way. Remember, you are good, you are loving, you are kind. Bye.